Bitcoin investors are getting a little worried that the market is not breaking through $32,000. It's a key resistance level in this move up from the cycle low of November 2022. So should we all be concerned? Are we going to see further downside below $20,000 on Bitcoin? Viewers of the channel, you long-term viewers, probably know what my answer to this is going to be. However, let's back it up with some data from the markets, looking specifically at some of the clues that has occurred in the NASDAQ in history, looking at key accumulation levels, all-time highs for Bitcoin. Let's dive into today's videos. This is your home of macro cycle analysis. We study the past to forecast the future, and you can go back and check all of these videos out for key in detail coverings of the markets, stock markets, crypto markets, Bitcoin, and of course the biggest in the world, the real estate cycle, as we continue to head up into this next peak. So what's happening right now for Bitcoin, and I guess where can we see things go from this point? Well, it's probably not news to anyone, or at least I hope it's not news to you guys, that the US SEC accepts 6 spot Bitcoin ETF proposals for review. So we've got some Bitcoin spot ETFs in for review. They haven't been approved yet, but they're in for review. And it's coming off the back of the big boys like Blackrock, Van Eck, and a couple of others which aren't such big boys. Now, I hope you have liked and subscribed to the content, because this is where things get interesting. Smash up that like button down below. Now, Blackrock's chart has just crossed past the 50% level after putting in a higher low. This is nice, strong confirmation of better things to come for Blackrock. Does Blackrock need a Bitcoin ETF in order for this chart to go up? I don't think so. I think they've got bigger things going on than a Bitcoin spot ETF. However, there are good signs that there is strength from Blackrock. Is it clutching at straws? Possibly, and I'm happy to admit that. But the good news is, for the tech sector, a lot of these charts are heading up. A lot of the stocks have hit new fresh highs, and I've got some data to get through on that as well. Trading above their 50 and 200-day moving averages. We've got lots of tech data to get through and what that means moving forward. As I said, along with the NASDAQ now within 5% of a new all-time high. So in terms of Blackrock itself though, this is at least a strong company that is proposing a Bitcoin ETF. Now, many will probably just assume that Blackrock was a strong company, but just go back a few months when you look at the March lows that were around the banking crisis, the collapse of all of those banks and other companies in the financial space. The market took a dive, and the weak banks went down even harder and basically collapsed from that point. They had a terrible looking chart. They had highs back in 2017, and they were down for 17 years, like Credit Suisse. Now, I'd show you Credit Suisse, but it's gone. The chart of it has gone. It was down. It's been dumped. What we want to see now is that this market stays up. You've got the strength in the background of the NASDAQ stocks, of the S&P stocks. This is all part of the cycle that we've been discussing here since the lows of June, of the cycle low in October, and the most important low, the higher low that occurred in March of 2023, when most assumed the world had to collapse because the banks collapsed. They were comparing 2023 to a previously already done cycle in 2008, saying that, well, there was a banking crisis here and the markets collapsed, it had to happen again. Well, if you just look at history and study and learn from the past like we do here on the channel, what happens when that occurs? What does the US do? Well, it pretty much supports the banks. It tries not to let the system go down as best as it can. And now is not the time for the system to go down. We've talked about that multiple times. And like you know, we've been covering this for a very, very long time on the channel. So these lows extremely important in March, just like they are for Bitcoin as well. Now, the main thing here is Blackrock is up, breaking 50%, nice and strong. Also showing strength in the NASDAQ with plenty of these tech stocks that are now pushing to new all-time highs. So where does that leave Bitcoin in terms of its time cycle? Well, you might have remembered that we've been covering this as well, looking at the weeks in a rally. So we've just hit 4 weeks up when most were expecting a huge correction from that first week. This was the June pump where Bitcoin came in from that low at 25 or 24.8K and then pushed all the way up to $31,000 within that same sort of 8 or 9 days. Now, granted, we have not gone any further from that point. I mean, that's just clearly here on the chart. But what did happen that we talked about was that we would not get a pullback within that first week after the pump. It did remain at these high levels for at least 4 weeks. And you could argue that this 5th week is still up here, but nonetheless, we're just using the ranges from the low to the high. So I'm trying to find what happens next from this point. Short term, difficult game. Longer term, we've been on point here for a very long time now based on time cycles, price targets, time targets, you name it, everything has been pointing to the upside. So we got 4 weeks up. You can see previously that the market likes to do approximately 3 to 5 weeks up at least. And in some cases, as we look at here with the moves from the lows to the highs, you can see we've got 9 weeks, 13 weeks, and previously in the bear market, another 9 weeks as well. Now, there are some moves that go 2 weeks up, 2 weeks down. But the main thing here that we're going to look at is how long does that entire move last? So if we are getting something a little longer than what we saw just recently, we had 5 weeks up from the March low to the peak. Then we had approximately 8 to 9 weeks down, 4 weeks up. Maybe we go on another move of approximately 9 weeks in total. So where does that drag us out to? Let's have a look now. Basically mid-August. We're looking at 8 weeks. It's going to take us to the first week of August. We'll look at 9 or 10 weeks, takes us towards that mid to late August. So we still have a little bit of time left, possibly, in what this run could be. But once that time is up, and I'm not saying that the time isn't up right now, but if we do get to that, probably the most extension on that time that we can hope for, once that time is up, then we should be looking for a significant correction at that point. So that is something to keep in mind moving forward into August. Hopefully for BTC, it breaks this 32K level because that is a very key level for Bitcoin right now. What could happen in the meantime is that we get a correction for the stock market, so the S&P and the NASDAQ, because we've looked at the time frames here. They have been trending up for quite a significant amount of time. The S&P is coming up to resistance at the technical macro level of the first lowest swing top of the previous bull market. A lot of words there. All that means is on a macro scale, looking here on our monthly chart, you can see that that was a very key level that the market rejected at. That's pretty much as simple as it is. And the reason why it's so important is that that was the first level that investors really got bullish again. The market got rejected from that point, and now we're coming up to test that price range again. So it's a key level that we're looking for the markets to get above. So potentially we do come up to some sort of resistance soon in the coming weeks to months here. But if we can get above this key level, that might be enough to get Bitcoin over the line, at least sort of push this thing up a little higher. Because what that would mean is for the stock markets is that it's getting above key resistance levels that were rejected on the way down. So this is going to be super, super important. I'd say over the course of this month, potentially into August or September, eventually we'll have to have a rejection. And what's shown in the past is that September has been some red months in the past. You can see here in 2020, a nice red month here. In 2022, another red month. 2021, red month. So many know that September can lead to a red month. So it's got to happen sooner rather than later so that hopefully Bitcoin can also get a push on so it has some room to move to the downside should we get that correction all at the same time across the stock markets. Now, longer term than that, longer term, looking out further than the next 1 to 3-ish months, we're looking at the S&P info tech stocks after a greater than 93% of technology stocks above the 50 to 200 day and 200 day moving average. So when a greater part of the technology stocks are above their 50 and 200 day moving averages, this has been an extremely bullish time for these stocks. And it's basically showing you that it's the start of the move. You can see it happen at the bottom, nice move up, happens in the middle, continued move up. happens in the middle again, continued move up, there is your peak. So it's not always the case. Let's just keep that in mind as well. Heaps in the middle here through the 70s, had to wait a while for it to move up. We're in a different time frame now. You can see this happened in 2003, more move to the upside. You can see it happen again in, that's about 2009, 2010, huge move to the upside. And then again in 2020, we know what happened there into 2021, big move to the upside as well. Now we're just starting to see it again, and the indicators are leading to further upside over the longer term, over the course of years. So if you see the market reject tomorrow, don't worry. This stuff is based on months to years, not just day to day, 24 hours. So when the signal shows up, what happens 6 months later, 12 months later? We're concerned with the months to the years ahead, not the weeks or the single months here, of course. So 6 months later, how many times has it been positive? 70%. Not really enough for us to be too concerned. 12 months later, 80% of the time, you get a positive result. The average max loss, 4%. The average max gain, 22%. So it's a pretty decent reading here that once this signal shows up, especially for the tech stocks, you can see the market does 8 out of 10 times go on to make you approximately another 20 odd %. Now, we're into the tech earnings season. We're seeing a lot of the AI stuff come through. Tech stocks are already up huge amounts. Microsoft, 49%. Alphabet stock jumped 39%. So this is the same period the shares of Microsoft and Alphabet. Meta and Nvidia have gained 157% and 220% year to date. The NASDAQ is up 36% since the banking crisis low. And I've only measured it from that point because it was such a critical, pivotal point for the market. If you missed March, try to go back and feel what that was all about, because this period was so extreme that almost everyone thought the market had to collapse and break a low. But we've been here on the channel explaining that. You can go back to the March videos here so that you can see it, talking specifically at that time that this is the higher low. This is the bottom that you want to buy. That is confirmation that these markets are going to pump to new all-time highs. Maybe not in 2023, but over the course of several years. That's what we were saying at that time in March 2023. I had no idea that we would pump this hard, this fast, going 36% up from that particular low. But either way, even if we were to get in at that time and just wait it out, have the patience, you have much more upside. So this helps us understand what we are doing when it comes to BTC. It's about patience. You're seeing all of the indicators come together across the stock markets, your traditional S&P 500, you're looking at the NASDAQ 100. It's about patience here, and eventually this is going to happen to BTC. You're seeing the higher lows come in. The bottom in November, the March low in 2023, so that was the banking crisis low here at 19.5, and then of course the June low as well, where it came down to 24.8K. These lows are getting higher. So it's just about patience. The day-to-day thing here, whether we see a few percent down or 0.1% down, I think it's a fool's game to just sit on the sidelines and continue to wait for further collapses, because, sorry, I got a little... Because the signals are there from the smart money. The signals are there from the big players in the game that have been around some time, are showing us that they are buying up these markets at higher and higher prices, regardless of the massive, potentially damaging fundamental analysis that is going on out in the markets. What the media is telling us, what the news is telling us, time and time again, the markets have been bought up at higher and higher lows. So these yellow lines here are just identifying some of those areas that have probably been done and dusted. Probably not going to see the price under approximately 22K, definitely not going to see it under 20K. So with that in mind, then we can start to position ourselves to the upside. What is the possibility that we don't see these lower prices, meaning that these may be some of the best prices here between 25 and 30K. This could be the best times moving forward from that point, and we just have to be patient for that upside potential, as we've seen now with the stock markets taking off, the NASDAQ taking off here, and the S&P taking off as well. That helps you position yourself for your own portfolios when it comes to your Bitcoin positions, your ETH positions, maybe your degen, crypto, altcoin positions as well. So into the monthly or the longer term here, the weekly chart here for the NASDAQ, looking at the bigger picture, what's happened in the past when it comes to Bitcoin's accumulation, Bitcoin's all-time highs, what does that look like on the NASDAQ chart itself? So going to previous all-time highs, you can see here back in 2013, 2017, and 2021, the NASDAQ, although it wasn't in new all-time highs the first time, it was definitely in new all-time highs in that second move, the 2017 bull market. And again, definitely new all-time highs during that last bull market. The accumulation, it was nearly at all-time highs, and it touched it just towards the end of that accumulation in 2016 before we got into the 2017 bull market. So the NASDAQ was trading around in a trading range and then started to break out towards the end of that. The accumulation in 2019, 2020 saw the market trying to break out. It eventually did. Pandemic hits, and then we springboard into a new all-time high again. So towards the end of that accumulation, got into another new all-time high before Bitcoin takes off. Now this time around, we've seen a low come into the market, and we're seeing the market climb up, getting ready to test a new all-time high. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to come back down and test these lows again, but what could happen is we get a pullback. We get some sort of correction finally once we've tested some of these higher levels here, and we are at those higher levels. We've hit 16,000 on the NASDAQ for the first time since going all the way back to January of 2022. So we're at those levels now. Maybe we come up and test the tops here somewhere around 16,700 or 16,600. Then we get some sort of correction, similar to what we've seen in the past, breaking into new highs. This, I doubt we're going to see some sort of significant correction like that, but if it happens, take it. Don't sit on the sidelines like everyone did back in COVID. Don't sit on the sidelines like everyone did back in 2022. Take those if we ever saw anything like that. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think we will have some sort of minor correction, relatively speaking, to what we've seen in the past. Speaking of 2022, speaking of March 2023, those sort of corrections, possibly we're not going to see. So if we see something like that, they're the good times there. Maybe we'll get a breakout, and then towards the end of this, coming in the next several months, that could be the start of the next major bull market where we take out those highs. And like we talked about, this could be several months away, probably sometime in 2024 for Bitcoin to take out those tops. But for now, that seems like what the smart money is doing here. It's buying time. We're looking towards the NASDAQ and the S&P for more clues as they continue to climb closer to their all-time highs. And it seems like they're grabbing attention away from Bitcoin and crypto because it doesn't seem like there's any massive news headlines that people are waiting for, or we haven't seen anything break past those significant points either in a technical sense. So we're really looking for this 32K level to break on Bitcoin. Right now, attention seems to be with the stock markets as we head into some more earnings seasons on the NASDAQ. And I mean, who can't stop talking about the NASDAQ here, tech stocks, as they continue to power away to near new all-time highs. Now, the last thing is the US dollar. This has been also good for Bitcoin, but it takes time again. I know it's so unsexy to talk about patience and wait because everyone just wants to make money like that when it comes to crypto. But look at what happened before in the US dollar. We talked about the top here on the market, and thank you guys that comment in the comment section when I mentioned about us calling the top nearly to the day. It was the day before, but nonetheless, it was basically around this top. We knew that was coming in. We looked at the bottom coming in through March and April in this market here before we got this little rally. Talked about it clearly on the channel based on technicals and bringing together the market sentiment when we look at the news headlines and things like that. So we've got this bottom here as well. So we've got this minor bounce. Now we have the breakdown. So what happened here? We had the breakdown for the US dollar, even though this wasn't the bottom for Bitcoin, but the US dollar broke down in November, and that caused Bitcoin also to come in at its low in November of 2022. Now we've seen the US dollar continue down. Bitcoin has ridden up, and it looks like we're waiting on yet another break for Bitcoin. Hopefully to the upside. Of course, No one can tell for sure. But I've covered this before, looking at this as another possibility for Bitcoin to break to the upside. I've also covered in yesterday's video, so like and subscribe on the channel here. Going back to yesterday's video, looking at the average true range and how much that has died off in the market. And typically when we see this true range die off, the average true range, we eventually get a pop in the average true range. And since we're in a bull market, hopefully we get the pop to the upside. Of course, we can get the pop to the downside, which increases the range of the bars. But like you can see here, what happened in the banking collapse, we saw the pop back to the upside, which helped the average true range up yet again. So a lot of things coming together to potentially say that there's got to be a pop sooner or later, the volatility to come back into the market. I think most can agree that we will see some sort of volatility after such a flat period of trading, but many are unsure of which direction this is going to take. I'm saying longer term, this direction is going to be up. Maybe in the short term, it could be to the downside. I'm not overly concerned with a few percent drop to the downside, and no, my thesis has not changed. There has to be corrections, and this is looking like a much healthier move to the upside than what happened in 2019, where it just pumped the whole way and then the market died off for a very long time. I like it more because it is a little similar, not exactly the same, but a little more similar to 2015 and 2016, where we had some pumps, some corrections, some pumps and corrections, and this was difficult to live through. This was difficult to live through, but beautiful higher lows, pumps and corrections, just nice and methodical all the way up, not like this unsustainable thing that moves up and then corrects heavily. Okay, so that's it for today's video. Like and subscribe, heaps coming up. Thanks once again, guys. I'll see you at the next video. Till then, take care and peace out.